everyone. Welcome to today's presentation. My name is Maddie Kelly, and on behalf of ProTech Training, I will serve as your host today. Before I introduce you to our guest, however, I'm going to go over a few housekeeping items. So first off, the presentation will last approximately 45 minutes, and it will be full of great content. At the end of the presentation, we will open it up to a Q&A. During the webinar, however, you can feel free to enter any of your questions into the Q&A section on Teams. Today's presentation will be recorded, and in the next coming days, you'll receive an email with the recording link so you can go back and watch it. I am a member of the ProTech team, which offers instructor-led training for over 30 years now. We offer courses over a wide range of technologies that include mainframe, Java, Oracle, project management, and that's just naming a few. Please let us know in the chat if you have attended any of our courses or if you may need any training. Another member of ProTech, Marcy Lentz, will be here to assist us with the webinar, and she will run the Q&A at the end. Now I'll give you a little bit of information about our instructor, Kurt Struff. He is an independent consultant and the president of Lone Star Consultancy. He has over 20 years experience as a DBA and has been installing, migrating, and troubleshooting, as well as tuning Db2's systems throughout Europe. Besides his consultancy missions, he has been teaching a broad spectrum of Db2 courses, both in Europe as well as the USA. These classes range from basic courses like Db2 fundamentals and SQL workshops, over database administration and system admin classes, to system and application recovery and tuning workshops. He has also been a speaker at several large European and North American conferences. Kurt is an IBM Information Champion and IBM Gold Consultant, and he is the current president of IDUG. So now I will turn it over to Kurt, who will begin the presentation.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good night. I don't really know where you are, but welcome to this webinar. Today's talk is going to be about mastering the Db2's continuous delivery. I guess all of us are Db2 specialists or working with Db2 in one way or another. And so the idea is that we're going to go over some of the changes that came around in Db2 starting version 12. And of course, are still very well true in today's world as we are finishing off on Db2 12 and are moving into version 13, or some of us may already be in with 13, right? So let's get started a little bit. What is continuous delivery, right? And for those of you who've been around, and she was very kind saying 20 years, and I'm sure that's what it still said in my bio. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit longer now these days than 20 years into DB2. That means I'm getting old. But people that have been around DB2 for quite a while, I'm sure they can remember the days where you had these big releases, right? So about every 3 to 4 years we had a release, right? If you go back a little bit and the 20 years mark about, then we had DB2 version 7, which which came out in 2001, and then 3 years later you had version 8, and then 3 years later you had version 9, and so on, right? The great thing about that was that it gave people a moment to stop and kind of figure out what was new, figure out what was going on, and you had all these events, things like IDUG, things like classes at ProTech, where you really got into the novelties and the new stuff that was coming out in the new release of DB2. Everybody kind of stood still and took a look at very detailed what is going on, what is new, what are the features that we want to use, what are some of the features we may want to take a look at later, and so forth and so on. And you had all this great information that was coming at these very specific time frames, let's say once every 3 years or something like that. Downside for that, of course, was that new features just took a long time to be released, right? Imagine you're an IBM developer, you're working on some new stuff. Well, the next release is only going to go out 3 years from now. So that means your customers won't get to use the great stuff that you're developing for another 3 years. If for some reason or another you missed that window over those 3 years, now we're looking at 6 years. So in today's market, that's just not a good option anymore, right? Even though it was great for clarity, it was great for people to, get this massive information about new releases in. From a business point of view, it just doesn't make sense. And if you think about your own business, I'm sure similar things are going on in your office, right? When we took years or whatever to plan and to work on projects, today it's go to market ever faster, ever going forward. So if you think about it, the continuous delivery really is, the IBM method of agile development. We go to market when a feature is ready. Yeah. At the same time, you've been around on DB2 and mainframe, I'm sure, long enough to know that mainframe people like stability. I mean, that's one of the great key drivers to stay on mainframe, to work on mainframe, is that stability, right? So at the same time, IBM did not want to trade off stability or trade off agility for stability. So they gave us as DBAs or as system DBAs that those switches and knobs that we can turn to. We decide that when are we going to release new feature, when are we going to be releasing new stuff onto our machines. Yeah. What does it mean when we take a look at the function levels of DB2? Like I said, 2016, DB12 Fun G8. If you think about that, that's almost 10 years ago. Yeah. I don't know how that feels like to you, but to me, it didn't feel like 10 years or 9, right, for being correct. So 9 years ago, DB212 Fun G8, and most people, they went through their migration as they typically and normally did. And then a lot of us went and got the information on how to work with these function levels and how to activate them. And IBM played that really well by giving us this one feature, one functionality, function level, which 501. And a lot of us, and a lot of my customers, went through this, going from 500 to 501. Kind of had this feel, okay, this is how we're going to be doing this. This is how we can roll out changes going forward, right? And as you then see, the first function level 502 took a little bit longer to be developed, to be released, and from that moment on, you see at a cadence of about one release every 6 months, right? Some of them required a cat main for your catalog to be updated and to be changed. Others did not, right? And so here on this slide, you will see that a little bit of an overview of when these function levels came out, which of them required a cat main. Yeah? And then it brings us then to 2021, right? In 2021, function level 510 came out. Right? And function level 510 was just this switch. It doesn't really bring a new functionality to the table. It just is a switch just to make sure that you are ready to move and migrate to version 13. Yeah. Today, we're almost at the end of 2025, which means, by December 2025, DB2 version 12 will be out of support. So if you are not yet in DB2 13 and function level 100 is enough, then this may be a good time to start really thinking about that. And I hope you do not run into problems where you run out of time to migrate. Now, if this is a few months, I shouldn't probably not be saying this, but if it's a few months, be pragmatic about it. No stress. It'll work out. I don't recommend I don't recommend waiting too long to upgrade to version 13. With this, of course, this new functionality being brought in over time through the maintenance stream, and that also means that some of this education that I was earlier talking about has gone down, right? Where we have these big releases every 3 years and a lot of focus on what is new. As these function levels roll out every 6 months, it is hard to keep up with what's inside of them. What is a particular function level bringing out, and do you understand what it is bringing to the table, and do you understand how to work it, right? On top of that, after the big enthusiasm of 501, I noticed that the vast majority of my customers never really went beyond that. And I believe that the reason that this was that in function level 502, we immediately had to do a cat mate, right? We had to make changes to the catalog, and a lot of people were like, well, I don't really know how to do that and how to sell that to my management and whatnot. And a lot of people either stayed on 500 or 501, and they stayed until 500 or 501 until it was time where they thought, and the support is coming out. Maybe I should start doing something about this new function level. And then I saw a lot of people going from 500 or 501, going straight to 510. And guess what? It was easier than we thought, right? Most of us didn't really have an issue. Or actually, none of my customers did. Maybe you guys didn't. Hope you didn't. But most of us did not have any issues. And the world kept turning. We had a lot of stability, and everything went fine. Now all of a sudden we have 510. And so it's one of the things that I see in the market and with all my customers, that while we're very traditional, very safe going forward in version 12, and like I said, a lot of them stayed on 500 or 501. All of my customers are, when they're migrating to version 12, for version 13, all of them are migrating to the last version or the last stable version, right? As you can see here on the slide, right? Function level 507 came out, and function level 507 came out in April. That's 4 months ago. I don't know what your policy is. Maybe you say, I don't want to go to a release that's younger than 6 months or younger than 10 months or younger than 3 months. Whatever your policies, whatever you feel comfortable with, is a good marker. But I do see that most of my customers today are either going to 506 or 507. And I predict that by the end of the year, there will be a new function level 508, is what I'm predicting or guessing. And I think that most of my customers, if they haven't already gone to one of the function levels, they'll probably go to 507, if not 508. Right? So you see definitely there's a shift in behavior, there's a shift in how we perceive the stability of these function levels. Right? Like I said, 12, a lot of us stayed on 500 and 501, and realized after jumping to 510 that there really wasn't a reason to, but why we did. Right. So the continuous delivery model actually means exactly that, right? Like we saw on the previous slide, every 6 months we have a new release or a new function level coming out, and in this function level, they come along together in the maintenance stream. So the maintenance stream now holds two types of things: your bug fixes or your PTFs, and your new features. Yeah, and those new features. They're grouped together by what we call function levels, right? Back in version 11, what we used to talk about new function mode, right? New function mode today is M500, but that's V12 or M500 or V13 or M500. That R1 is just there in case if IBM ever decides to do a release 2 of DB2 on ZOS of a particular version. At this moment, it's not being used, but they kept the possibility open, right? Function levels increase by number, so as they go along, it's M501, M502, M503, and all of those function levels are cumulative. So that means that you don't have to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. No, if you apply 5, then you automatically get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So that is makes life a lot easier for us DBAs, so we don't have to reiterate the same process over and over. Yeah. That does mean that whenever we now install PTFs, whenever you're doing your SMPE, whenever you're bringing your target libraries to your Db2 system, they will contain the new code. Yeah, let that sink in. I like when people say, well, I don't like the instability. No, whenever you install PTF today, you will bring in the new code. The load libraries will contain all the functionalities it needs for, in today's world, version 13, function level 507. Yeah. So it contains all of that. Whether you choose to use it, that's a different story, right? And so again, this is where that granularity comes that IBM gave us, that allows us to make the decision when we're going to activate a feature. The when we activate a feature actually comes in 2 steps. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit, right? So the maintenance is put on, the new functionality is available, and you as a customer decide whether you're going to use it or you're going to leave it dormant for a while longer. Yeah. Similar to before in version 11, version 10, whatever, all of your Db2's had to be at a certain level, right, for you to go forward in a data sharing environment. Yeah. Same thing here, right? All of your DB2 members must be in a version 12 M500, R1 M500, or version 13 R1 M500 before you can activate new functions, the new functions in your data sharing group, and that kind of makes sense, of course. Yeah. If you take a look at the official wording, it's the V 12 or 13, R1, and then M500, or the function level. However, a lot of the literature will actually use the FL500. So M500 or FL500, if you look at it and looking into, they're kind of intermixed, and you will find either one of them. Display group has been modified, and I'm sure all of you have seen that since version 12, has been modified to show the information on the function levels. Where you are, which of the data sharing members are on which level, et cetera, right? So like I said, it goes in different steps. One, you're going to apply your maintenance, as we've been doing for decades, right? If needed, you may have to do a cat mate. Yeah? Your catalog definition might have changed or might have shifted during the new functionality. Then you might decide to activate a higher function level, one of that is in your libraries. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go to the highest one that's available. Like I said, if today you install new maintenance on DB2, you will get version 13 M507. Yeah. Function level 507 is 4 months old. In your shop, you may decide not to go there yet, and you might want to decide to go to function level 506. That is completely possible. At that moment, once that is done, you've activated a particular function level, then you may decide that applications are now allowed to use this function level. That means that we have to do a bind or a rebind using the Apple compatibility, the function level, the Apple compatibility keyword, and assign the function level that we want that application to use. And again, if we look back, version 12, a lot of us stayed on function level F500 or 501. And indeed, a lot of our applications never got bound with this Apple Compat, unless some customers really needed a particular feature. Yeah. Once that is done, once you feel comfortable with a particular Apple Compat, let's say 505, version 13, 505, you will feel very comfortable with that, you may decide to then make that your system default by setting that into the ZParm. Yeah. So these are different steps. 1, apply maintenance. 2, decide whether or not do your cat maint. 3, decide whether you want to go to a higher maintenance level or function level. If you do that, bind your applications that you want to do, and then at a certain moment feel confident to turn that function level into your default and work it into your ZParms. Yeah. Important to understand is that when you activate a new function level, it may implicate that you have particular incompatibilities. Yes. One of the bigger ones, version 12, R1 function level 504, meant that no more deprecated objects could be created. Yeah, so no more segmented table spaces, no more synonyms, and all that kind of stuff, right? The display group command, like I said, has been modified since version 12. That we and in version 13, there's actually some more modifications. This is I need to update this slide. Version 12 and version 13 give you an overview of where you are. What is your catalog level? What is the current function level? What is the highest activated? What is the highest possible? Kind of give you that information. So here you could also see if you at some point you went to a higher level and you then decided to turn back for some reason, that is a possibility. Yeah. You have that by member if you're in a data sharing environment. If you're not in a data sharing environment, then you obviously just see your one Db2 member. Yeah. Right. So let's assume we've done the install of our PTF, or of our maintenance stream, as we've been doing for years. We've ran our cat main because we need to make some changes to the catalog, or this function level required it, and then we're ready to go and see whether or not we want to activate a function level. Very important is that you have you can just either do it by running a cat main, or you can do it by activating a function level. Yeah. If you give the activation command, activate function level, and whatever function level, it is a good idea to run the test command first. So you can do activate function level, the function level that you want, and then say test. And that's just a safety measure. It'll give you an overview of all your data sharing members, whether or not they are eligible to activate the function level that you want, so that you don't get into issues when actually activating this function level. Yeah. So this would give you a little bit of an overview of this. If I wanted to see if my system was ready, remember it was on 501, and I want to see if my system is ready to run 502, then I just do activate function level test, and then here in this status, I have an overview and saying eligible or not eligible. Lucky for me, both my members are eligible, so I'm ready to go, and I can just give that command activate function level. Yeah. Important, though, is to understand that this does not change anything for your applications. It means that now you have the possibility to use new functions. It doesn't mean that you're going to be allowed to use them. So your applications still need to be activated at an application level if you want to use that new functionality. And the way you do that is, of course, doing a rebind. A lot of people decide to do that in a more granular way. Others decide to go full speed ahead. A lot of times I see the ones that are a bit more cautious are more in the financial world, and people who are not in the financial world tend to go say, I want those new features. I want my developers to be able to use them. And there's a case that you can make for both of them, right? If you want more stability, you're a little more risk avert, then you can say, let's wait a little while longer until my developers really need it. Or if you want them to immediately have the power of the new tools and features and functions that are in DB2, just make sure that you rebind their packages with the Apple compatible latest function level. Yeah. So quick way. You can if you take a look at your catalog, you can see that the Apple compat is one of the functions, one of the columns in sysIBM sys packages, and you can see what version you're at, and then you can granularly or all at once do a rebind using the Apple compat. Yeah. The Apple compat you have to use for this function level, in this case V12R1 M502. You have to use it as long as that has not been set as the system ZParm system default using a ZParm, right? Once, of course, if you've turned immediately the ZParm on to V12R1 M502, there's no need to run this rebind with the Apple compat keyword. You can just do a rebind. All right. So at ProTech, there's a full 2-day class, which of course I cannot summarize in 1 hour or 45 minutes of a webinar. But what does this class talk about? It talks about all of the new functionality that has been available since version 12. And I think that's important. A reason why is that not everybody goes to IDEX, not everybody follows classes a lot of times. And so, like I said, we typically stop doing these big bang moments where a lot of information was brought to us, the end user. So it's a good time to stand still and understand fully of what has been going on since version 12 went GA. Remember, this is 9 years ago. If you've never taken a class like this, you may be missing out on 9 years of new features, new possibilities in DB2, right? I think it's very important both for architects, developers, DBAs to stay current with their knowledge. So when a question comes up, we can advise our developers, we can advise our business users to a correct solution. Yeah. So we give a quick recap of what's going on in DB2 version 12, then we go a detailed dive in all the new function levels, right? And then we do the same thing for the version 13, and we do talk about the migration flow. Yeah. For now, I'll just do a quick recap, right? Some of what I call my highlights, and obviously there's more in the class, but one of the things that I think are some of the things that I think are really important in version 12. First of all, things like the ZParm DDL materialization, always immediate, always pending. Yeah. Very important ZParm that allows you to control how you want to roll out your DDL changes. I do have to bring to mind, or do have to repeat everybody that a lot of the new features, a lot of new possibilities are only there for universal table spaces. Yeah, and if you're in a partition by range, some of them are even only limited to the relative page numbering ones. Yeah. We'll get into it in a couple of slides, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands. Yeah. If today you still have segmented table spaces, simple table spaces, classically partitioned table spaces, today, not tomorrow, today is the time that you want to start changing that. Yeah, you want to migrate away from them. If you still have them, migrate away from them as soon as you can. Yeah. They're deprecated. Yeah, they're deprecated, and since version 12.504, which again is 7-8 years ago, if you went to that function level, they're not allowed to be created anymore. And I know a lot of, or at least some of my customers decided to, kind of wait and see. Right? There were reasons. I'm not saying that. A lot of those reasons have been moved away in later function levels. The easiness of migrating be one of them. The big reorg is still a factor and can't change that. But today, rather than tomorrow, if you have not started that journey of moving away from segmented table spaces, classic partition table spaces to universal table spaces, please do so. And that's just not me saying that. IBM has clearly announced that whatever the next release will be after version 13, we can never say the number, but whatever comes after 13 at some point, there will not be a migration towards the next version of DB2 if you still have segmented simple table spaces or classically partitioned table spaces. Yeah, let that sink in. Yeah, DB2 13 has been out for 3 years already, or roughly. Yeah, so don't wait too long if you still have one of those, regardless of the fact that you want to use new features or not today. At the same time, I also recommend it just for many other reasons. Like I said, this the DDL materialization, always immediate, always pending. Right? You have the choice when a new DDL becomes valid or not. I'm going to do an alter on my table space. Do I want to make this happen now, or do I want to just wait for the next reorg? Yeah. We have relative page numbering and range partitions, which allows for much bigger table spaces, and another number of great features on relative page numbering. At the beginning, early DB2 version 12 days, there were some hiccups and there were some issues with relative page numbering, and some of us may have heard about that. They might have read about it and said, I'm not really sure if I want to go there. Let me assure you, those issues have been fixed, I should say, and this is definitely the way forward. Yeah. So if you were still doubting about this, absolutely make sure that you go that route. Version 12 GA brought us things like transfer of ownership, brought us the new inserting algorithm, which was promised very bigly. Again, there were some issues at the beginning. Maybe some of the news was brought too positively. Doesn't mean that the insert algorithm 2 isn't right. It's a great thing if you use it correctly. Yeah. So for those of you, we're kind of going to be doing a sort of prefetching that, like we do with reading. We're going to do a prefetching, put the available pages in a pipe, and then when we insert, we don't have to go get them no more. So in certain scenarios, high volume inserts, definitely something worth taking a look at if you haven't taken a look at that. Temporal tables, version 12, yes, 10 years around. They've been around now. Allow you to put a time dimension in your tables. Right? You can have the two flavors, system, business. If you have not looked into that, great thing that can help you in your development. Yeah. Advanced triggers, again, a no-brainer, right? If you have triggers today and they're still of the classic type of triggers, this is something you want to take a look at. Yeah. Advanced triggers are easily recognizable because they don't have the mode DB2 SQL in there, or mode DB2 in the keyword in the definition of the trigger. So changing them is very easy. But what's the great thing about these advanced triggers is that, one, you can do more with them. Yeah, you can now fully do SQL or SQL PL in the trigger body, but more importantly, you can have versions. Yes, you can put on a new version of a trigger and so forth and so on without changing the order in which they're going to be fired. So if you haven't done that, please take a look at that. Delete fetch first and rows only. I was amazed. I came into a customer shop not too long ago. Again, we're talking 10 years down the line, or at least 9 years down the line. Had never heard about the delete fetch first and rows only. Yeah. What it does, if you remember, if you have a big delete statement, you say delete where, everything older than 3 months, whatever. This may be millions of records. Yeah. Problem there is that's all one unit of work. Can lead to log escalation, long locks, a lot of the logging conditions. If you have replication going on, they don't like that either. So you can now chunk it up. Before you could chunk it up by using a cursor, right? But then you had to create the cursor and then do fetch next, and then delete where current off, and I'll do all that kind of stuff, right? Today you can just say delete fetch first 1,000, 10,000 rows, do a commit, and just put it in a loop and just let it run. I think it's one of the fantastic statements in DB2, together with the merge statement. I'm a huge fan of merge statement. Merge is the combination of insert and update. Okay. I don't know whether the record I'm going to be inserting is that a new record, or is that should that actually be an update of a record? I don't know. Use merge. Again, powerful stuff. If you haven't looked into that, please do. And then on a utility level, one of my personal favorites is the redirected recovery. Yeah. Rather than just crashing your backup over your vSAN file, you're going to redirect it to another file, and that allows your application team to go in and compare and correct the errors rather than just crashing over. Yeah, I think it's a great step forward. In light of time, I'm going to move a little bit faster. Version 12, function levels. Again, in the class, we go into full detail. For here, I just took a few. And then of those few function levels, I just took one of the, for me personally, one of the better features. And so if you're not familiar with all of these features, then either go out, read a book, or attend a class, right? Or go get yourself informed. So the first functionality is function level 100 brought the list tag. It was just one function that allowed for list aggregation. It's a really great and really cool function. It solves a lot of people's problems. But again, I was in a shop 9 months ago or something, and the developer had never heard of list tag. Yeah, so if you haven't played around with this, during the class, we not only go into detail of this, we have a lab set up where we're going to be fully exploring the functionalities, allowing you to do to workshop on them. Yeah. Function level 504, prevention of new deprecated objects. Yeah. So that means once you're in function level 504, you can no longer create a segmented table space. Yeah. That has some implications in case of recovery and whatnot, and make sure that you understand those. Yeah. Function level 505, yeah, really great performance improvement from runstats. Yes, because now runstats is going to do an automatic page sampling by default, so you don't have to specify that anymore. Really great. One small downside. Yeah. Your RTSs don't get updated anymore. Is that a problem? I don't know. Maybe it is for you, or maybe it isn't. Just make sure that you understand all of these implications, and when you take a look at them. Yeah. Function level 507, really, really powerful stuff that came out in version 12, right? We have the num-lkts, the num-lkus, and the maximum number of locks for a table space or for a user. Okay? Remember, this is a zparm. This means this is the same for everybody. But maybe you have these applications that you kind of want to allow to have more locks or less locks or whatever, and that granularity is now possible by having new special registers. Yeah, make sure that you understand that. Function level 510, like I said, know what it means. It's just a switch to or a check to indicate that you are ready to go to version 13. Yeah. Then version 13, we cover that, and we talk about the migration flow. Now that being said, the class that I'm alluding to here is not a installation and migration class. There isn't ProTech does have an installation and a migration class where you actually get to migrate from a version 12 to a version 13 and do all that. This is not that class. This gives you an overview and make sure that everybody understands how migration works. You're not actually going to be doing a migration. That'd be in a different class. Yeah. We go into full detail about the features that you get immediately from function level 100, and we do exercises in them to understand what the benefits are immediately going immediately after a migration. Yeah, and then similar as we do in version 12, we go in a full detailed explanation of the different function levels of version 13, and we allow you to practice on them. Yeah. And I think the hands-on experience always tell the story better, I believe, at least for me. Once I've worked with it to understand which some of the pain points are, you understand how things work. Once I put my hands on the keyboard and I've done it, it gives me that goes for me. I don't know how your brain works, but for me that means I typically understand much better what's going on. Yeah. The class that we've built is broadly built. Like I said, it's not a technical installation class. ProTech does have that. Who should attend a class like this class? To me, application DBAs, make sure that they understand fully what the new functionalities bring, and so they can advise development teams on the choices they make. Remember, if we don't advise our developers, if we don't advise our business correctly, they may go and look at other relational database platforms. So making sure that yourself are well educated and well understanding of what's going on is important for yourself, your career, your business, and your company. Yeah. Architects, similarly. Yeah. The architects might have a little bit of a more difficult time during the exercise, but we'll help them through it, and at least then maybe they do understand some of the features of those. Of course, developers. Developers to me are very close to my heart, and there's two easy ways of scoring or getting the cheap laugh out of a DBA crowd. Is one, making fun of Oracle, and secondly is making fun of developers. We've all done that. I know that. Now the thing is, they are key to your organization, right? And if we don't train them, if they don't get the information that sometimes we as a DBAs or system DBAs get, then how do we expect them to do their job properly? Yeah. So make sure that your developers are aware of the new functionality that's out there. They are aware of what the consequences are. They are aware of how to implement them. I think that's a key features. Manage your DBA teams. A lot of times, I don't know how this works in your organization, but a lot of the shops where I go, is the manager that attends like startup meetings. Is the manager that sits into meetings with higher management. It's or when new projects are being introduced or whatnot. A lot of times, as a manager of the DBA team, well, you probably want that manager to be kept up to date so that he or she does not make any false promises, or he or she knows what's going on and can defend DB2 and the system appropriately. Yeah. A system DBA, of course, is also welcome, but for them, I do recommend actually the installation and migration class. Points to some of the stuff or some of the similarities, obviously, of the new features, but it does also go into a full installation and migration setup and exercises. I welcome everybody to the system installation and migration class, but if you're a developer and have never seen a Db2 system site, that might be a bit tricky. Okay, so this is a more broader level a class that allows you to get good information and know what Db2 is capable of in the long run. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to our host.
Thank you, Kurt. I wanted to thank everybody for attending today. If you liked what you've seen today and want to continue to follow it, if you follow us on LinkedIn, you'll be kept aware of our up and coming events, classes that we're having, webinars that we're hosting, just general keeping up with us and following us on LinkedIn. You'll be able to see that information. Also, here are some of our upcoming DB2 courses and the dates that we have. If you've enjoyed having Kurt as much as I have explained some of this stuff today, reach out to ProTech and sign up for one of his future courses. Kurt, we did have a question come in, is surely we have to start converting our non-UTS TS ASAP, but in your point of view, how much time do we have until the DB2 13 EOS?
Oh, that's always a difficult question. My best guesstimate, and it's nothing more, nothing less, is that DB2 13 has now been out for about 3 years. So if I had to guess, and again, this is just purely guesswork from my end, I wouldn't see it impossible that a new version of DB2 will come out in the next 2.5 years at the most, is what I'm guessing. So that means before then another end of support. You probably have about a good 6-7 years still ahead of you, but I wouldn't wait that long because you're missing out on a lot of new features, a lot of possibilities, a lot of new improvements. All of those new improvements, all of those features, all of that great stuff that you can really harness the power of DB2, they all come from or at least they expect you to have universal table spaces. So if I had to put a number on it, I would say you probably have about 7 years, something like that. But I really wouldn't wait that long.
Okay. How do you ensure that business critical applications remain stable while implementing continuous delivery updates?
Right. So we of course in DB2, well, and it kind of depends on what kind of system that you're in, right? If you're in a more dynamic environment where you have a lot of dynamic SQL, you are more prone to having application changes and access path changes and whatnot. That is still true with no functionality levels. If you're in a static world, of course, you can use plan management to ensure that you have the access paths and you have the performance metrics from before you activate a new function level, and you can revert back to those access paths and whatnot. That being said, in my personal experience, 85, 90, 95% of your applications will perform equally good or better when going to a new function level or a new version of DB2. And this has to do with runtimes being better, access path selection being more accurate, all of the new possibilities that you have. But I do understand the concern of stability. Nobody's going to talk about the 99 transactions that went slightly better or stayed the same. Everybody's going to be talking about that one transaction that got worse. Yeah. So if you're in a static world, by all means, make sure that you use your plan management to be able to fall back to your previous access path. If you're in a more dynamic world, I'm sure there are definitely ways to, you can do things like bind query, make sure that you understand those things. So bind query is a way of stabilizing your dynamic statement or falling back to a particular previous access. So there are ways of limiting the risk, but it surely shouldn't stop you from activating them.
Awesome. We had another one come in. Do we need to rebind DB2 JDBC CLI packages if we activate function levels in version 13?
That's always a good question. If you want to, yes, you should at some point. Whether you want to do that immediately and activate it for the newest function level, I'm going to leave that up to you. If you're up to date with your connect with your drivers and whatnot, I surely would. But what I see most of my customers do is for the null ID packages. It used to be in version 12. We kept them on version 12, and then for the specialty cases, we created a new collection with, let's say, function level 504 or 505 or whatever. What I see in version 13 doing is the reverse way, allowing the function level of your default null ID packages to follow the function level that you're on. So doing a rebind, in fact, and then keeping a collection at a lower function level if needed be. So again, it's one of those things that I see shifting in the market, shifting where how and when people are doing things.
How do you currently handle regression testing when adopting new DB2 features?
Well, that depends. That's a very broad question. It depends on the feature, obviously. I am a big fan of trying to automate as much as possible. So I also like to automate as much as possible my testing. Yeah, that's a really broad question to answer in the few minutes that we have left. But I would say key is automation. If anything, yeah.
Awesome. Last chance for any additional questions for Kurt to answer for us. If I get any more, I'll let you know. But again, I want to thank everybody for attending. I want to thank you, Kurt, for putting this on for us today. I've learned a lot myself, and got to deep dive into a little bit of DB2 today.
There we go.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.